There comes a moment in every life when the truth stands before you, not knocking anymore, not whispering from some distant room, but standing there plainly, asking only one thing. Will you look? Not tomorrow, not when you are ready, not when the truth becomes easier to carry. Now, because reality has never needed our permission to be real, we may close our eyes, rename what hurts us, excuse what diminishes us, and build beautiful stories around things that are quietly breaking us. But beneath all those stories, reality remains. And sometimes the greatest tragedy is not that life deceived us. It is that we deceived ourselves because the truth frightened us. We tell ourselves this relationship will change. We say, I can endure a little longer. We whisper, maybe someday I will become the person I keep promising myself I will be. We look at the years passing and call it patience. We look at our unhappiness and call it normal. We look at our fear and call it wisdom. But there is a difference between accepting reality and surrendering to it. Seeing clearly does not mean giving up. It means finally removing the veil. It means looking at your life without the soft language of excuses and asking, what is actually happening here? What am I avoiding? What have I already understood but refuse to admit? What am I losing while I keep pretending everything is fine? Because time does not always announce what it is taking from us. A day disappears quietly, then a month, then a year. And one morning, you wake up and realize that the life you were waiting to begin has been passing through your hands all along. That is why seeing reality matters. Not because reality is always beautiful. It isn't. Sometimes reality breaks your heart before it gives you freedom. Sometimes seeing clearly means admitting that someone does not love you the way you hoped they would. Sometimes it means admitting that a dream has changed. Sometimes it means acknowledging that you have been standing in the same place, calling it progress simply because you were afraid to move. But truth, even when it wounds, has one extraordinary quality. It gives you something denial never can, a place to begin. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You cannot leave a room you insist does not exist. You cannot heal a wound you keep covering with beautiful words. And you cannot become free while protecting the very illusion that keeps you imprisoned. So look at your life, look at your choices. Look at the people you keep giving your precious days to. Look at the dreams you abandoned. Look at the person you have become. And do not look with cruelty. Look with courage. Because perhaps the truth you have been running from is not here to destroy you. Perhaps it came to wake you. Perhaps this moment, the uncomfortable moment, the honest moment, the moment when you can no longer pretend, is the doorway you have been waiting for. And if you have the courage to walk through it, you may discover that seeing reality as it is does not end your story. It changes everything. There is a strange comfort in looking away. When something hurts, the human heart often learns to turn its face from the truth. We tell ourselves that tomorrow will be different. We convince ourselves that the person who keeps disappointing us will suddenly understand our worth. We stay inside situations that exhaust us because leaving feels more frightening than suffering. We call it hope, but sometimes it is simply fear wearing a beautiful name. Reality, however, does not change because we refuse to look at it. A closed door remains closed whether your eyes are open or shut. A broken relationship does not become whole because you refuse to admit that it is broken. A dream that no longer belongs to you does not become meaningful simply because you continue carrying it. The truth waits quietly beneath the stories we create, and no amount of pretending can make it disappear. This is why avoiding reality can become more painful than facing it. Denial may protect you from discomfort today, but it often sends the bill to tomorrow. Every truth postponed becomes another weight carried. Every difficult conversation avoided becomes another invisible wall. Every warning ignored gives a problem more time to grow roots. Sometimes we think we are protecting ourselves when we refuse to see clearly. We believe that if we do not name the pain, perhaps it cannot hurt us. But unnamed pain does not disappear. It finds other places to live. It enters our confidence, our decisions, our relationships, our sleep, and even the way we imagine our future. What we refuse to confront can quietly begin directing our lives. Seeing reality does not mean becoming cold, hopeless, or negative. It means becoming honest. It means looking at what is happening without adding excuses, fantasies, or fear. It means saying, this is where I am, not because you intend to remain there, but because you cannot choose a new direction until you know your present location. Think about how powerful that is. The moment you stop arguing with reality, you recover energy. You no longer have to spend your days convincing yourself that something is different from what it is. You can finally use that energy to decide what comes next. Maybe the truth is that you need to walk away. Maybe it is that you need to begin again. Maybe you need to forgive yourself for wasting time. Maybe you need to admit that you have been waiting for permission to become the person you already know you can be. Whatever the truth is, let it be seen. Do not punish yourself for discovering it late. Do not shame yourself for believing what you wanted to believe. You were trying to survive with the understanding you had at the time. But now you see more clearly, and clarity creates responsibility. The past cannot be rewritten, but the next decision can be different. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop asking reality to become what you want, and finally become brave enough to meet reality as it is. Because the moment you do, you stop living inside an illusion and begin living inside the possibility of change. We all carry stories about our lives. We tell ourselves who we are, what happened to us, why someone treated us a certain way, why we stayed, why we failed, why we cannot begin again. These stories can give meaning to our experiences, and sometimes they help us survive difficult seasons. But there are moments when the story becomes more important to us than the truth. We begin protecting the story, even when the story is protecting the very thing that keeps us stuck. You may tell yourself, I am just being patient, when deep inside you know you are afraid to leave. You may say, I am waiting for the right opportunity, when the truth is that you are afraid to risk failure. You may believe, people always disappoint me, because accepting that you repeatedly choose people who cannot give you what you need would require you to examine your own choices. The story feels safer because it gives you an explanation without demanding transformation. This is one of the most subtle ways we can lose ourselves. We do not always lie to other people. Sometimes we become experts at lying gently to ourselves. We edit reality until it becomes easier to swallow. We remove the parts that hurt. We emphasize the parts that make us feel innocent. We turn warnings into coincidences and patterns into isolated incidents. And eventually, we can become so familiar with our version of the story that we forget to ask whether it is true. But reality has a way of returning. The same disappointment appears again. The same kind of relationship leaves the same wound. The same fear stops the same dream. The same excuses produce the same consequences. And eventually life asks us to stop explaining and start seeing. This does not mean you should blame yourself for everything that happened. Life is complicated. People can hurt us unfairly. Circumstances can be cruel. Some losses are beyond our control. But healing begins when we separate what happened to us from what we are choosing now. You cannot change yesterday, but you can change the meaning you allow yesterday to have over tomorrow. Perhaps you have spent years saying, this is just who I am, but maybe it is not who you are. Maybe it is who you became while trying to survive. Perhaps you say, I am not lucky. Maybe the deeper truth is that you have become afraid to act when opportunity arrives. Perhaps you say, nobody understands me. Maybe there are places where you have never allowed yourself to be fully known. The purpose of confronting these stories is not to destroy yourself with criticism. It is to give yourself permission to become honest enough to grow. Ask yourself, what story have I been repeating because it protects me from a truth I do not want to face? That question may make you uncomfortable. Let it. Sometimes discomfort is the sound of an old illusion beginning to crack. And when it cracks, do not rush to repair it. Look through the opening. You may discover that the truth is not nearly as frightening as the life you created to avoid it, and that the moment you stop protecting the story and start embracing what is real is the moment you finally give yourself permission to write a different future. Awareness is rarely comfortable at first. It asks us to notice what we have spent years avoiding. It brings forgotten questions back into the room. It makes us look at the habits, relationships, choices, and fears that we once explained away. This is why many people prefer denial. Denial is soft. It asks nothing from us. Awareness is different. Awareness says, look again. Look honestly. Look without excuses. You know when a relationship has become empty. You know when a dream no longer excites you. You know when you are living according to someone else's expectations. You know when your own habits are quietly stealing your future. The knowledge may be buried beneath distractions and explanations, but it remains there. And sometimes we think that if we avoid the truth long enough, the pain will disappear. But time does not automatically heal what we refuse to understand. A wound hidden beneath clothing is still a wound. A problem ignored is still a problem. A life lived unconsciously is still a life being spent. Denial has a price, and the price is often time. You can recover money. You can rebuild a career. You can create new opportunities. But yesterday does not return. The years you gave to fear cannot be collected from some hidden account. This is why awareness, though painful, is a gift. When you become aware, you begin to see patterns. You notice what repeatedly drains you. You recognize which choices create peace and which choices create chaos. You begin hearing the difference between your genuine desires and the voices you inherited from other people. Some walls around you were never locked. You simply became afraid to touch the handle. Awareness may break your heart, but it can also break your chains. Perhaps you discover that you have been seeking approval from people who were never capable of giving it. Perhaps you realize you have been waiting for confidence before taking action, when confidence was supposed to grow through action. Perhaps you finally admit that the person you keep trying to save does not want to change. These realizations can hurt deeply, but they also return something precious. Choice. Once you see clearly, you can decide. You can stay knowing why, or leave understanding what you are leaving. You can begin again without pretending the past never happened. That is the power of awareness. It does not promise that reality will become easy. It gives you something more valuable, freedom from living blindly. So if the truth hurts, do not immediately run from it. Sit with it. Listen to what it is revealing. Ask what it wants you to understand. Let discomfort teach you, because the pain of seeing your life clearly may last for a season, but the pain of refusing to see can quietly consume years. And there is no greater loss than reaching the end of a chapter, and realizing you spent it protecting yourself from a truth that could have set you free again. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People hear the word and imagine surrender, as though accepting reality means giving up on change. But acceptance is not surrender. It is the moment you stop fighting against what has already happened and begin deciding what you will do with what remains. You cannot change the fact that someone disappointed you. You cannot erase the years you spent afraid. You cannot make yesterday choose differently. You cannot return to an earlier version of yourself and whisper the wisdom you have today into that person's ear. The past is finished, whether you accept it or not. But the future is still listening. That is where acceptance becomes powerful. When you accept reality, you stop wasting your strength arguing with facts. You stop asking why something happened 1,000 times when the answer will not change what happened. You stop waiting for another person to become different before allowing yourself to move forward. You stop demanding that life apologize before you permit yourself to live again. Acceptance says, this happened. This is where I am. Now what can I choose? That question can change everything. Maybe you lost something you desperately wanted. Acceptance does not mean pretending the loss did not hurt. It means allowing yourself to grieve without building your entire identity around the wound. Maybe someone walked away from you. Acceptance does not mean you deserve to be abandoned. It means recognizing that you cannot force another person to stay and deciding that your life will continue anyway. Maybe you made mistakes. Acceptance does not mean declaring yourself a failure. It means acknowledging the mistake honestly enough to learn from it. There is enormous freedom in this kind of honesty. When you stop trying to change what cannot be changed, you recover energy for what can be changed. Your attention returns to the present. Your choices become clearer. You begin asking better questions. What can I do today? What boundary do I need to create? What habit needs to end? What conversation needs to happen? What dream deserves another chance? These questions move you from helplessness into responsibility, and responsibility is not punishment, it is power. As long as you believe your entire future depends on circumstances becoming different, you remain trapped by those circumstances. But when you recognize that your response still belongs to you, a door opens. You may not control what people think of you, but you can control how much of your life you spend trying to convince them. You may not control how quickly success arrives, but you can control whether you continue preparing. You may not control what yesterday took from you, but you can decide what tomorrow will receive from you. That is what acceptance gives us. Not an easier past, but a clearer present. So accept the truth without becoming its prisoner. Look at your life honestly, not to condemn yourself, but to reclaim your ability to choose. Because once you stop demanding that reality become something it is not, you can finally use your strength to create something different from what has been, and that is where real freedom begins. There is a moment in life when you realize that waiting has become its own decision. You tell yourself you will change when the timing is better, when you have more money, more confidence, more support, more certainty. You promise yourself that one day you will finally face the truth, make the difficult choice, leave the unhealthy situation, begin the dream, or become the person you know you can be. But life does not guarantee that one day will arrive in the form you imagine. That is why waking up before life forces you to matter so much. Sometimes life gives us gentle warnings, a feeling we cannot explain, a repeated disappointment, a relationship that constantly leaves us exhausted, a dream that keeps returning to our thoughts, a growing sense that something is wrong, even though everything appears acceptable from the outside. These moments are invitations to pay attention. But when we ignore enough warnings, life sometimes becomes louder. A small problem becomes a crisis. A neglected relationship becomes a permanent distance. A bad habit becomes an identity. Years of postponing ourselves become years we cannot recover. The lesson we could have learned through reflection eventually arrives through consequence. We should not wait for catastrophe to give us clarity. You do not need to lose everything before realizing what matters. You do not need to reach complete exhaustion before giving yourself permission to rest. You do not need someone to abandon you before recognizing that you deserve mutual respect. You do not need to fail completely before changing direction. Sometimes wisdom is simply listening while the warning is still quiet. Look at your life with honesty. Where have you been receiving the same message again and again? What have you been calling temporary even though it has lasted for years? What decision have you postponed because making it would force you to admit something uncomfortable? These questions are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to wake you, because waking up early is an act of love toward your future self. Your future self will live inside the consequences of what you choose today. The boundaries you create today may protect your peace tomorrow. The habits you change today may strengthen your future. The conversation you finally have today may prevent years of resentment. The courage you practice today may become the freedom you experience later. You do not have to change your entire life in one dramatic moment. Sometimes awakening begins with one honest sentence. This is no longer working for me. From there, you can take one step, then another. You can stop pretending. You can stop waiting for permission. You can stop confusing familiarity with happiness. You can stop calling fear a reason. And you can begin choosing with your eyes open. Life will always contain uncertainty. There will never be a perfect moment when every question has an answer and every fear has disappeared. If you wait for complete certainty, you may wait forever. So wake up while you still have choices. Pay attention to what your life is telling you before it has to shout. Listen to the discomfort before it becomes destruction. Honor the truth before regret becomes the only language left. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give your future is the courage to see clearly today and act before tomorrow decides for you.